This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar.
Hello, everybody.
Nailed it. Joined as always by Alex Barth. That's a fit. That's a match. No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
This is no joke. No cap right now.
Oh, don't know. You're 30.
I had a dream.
You're okay, but say it right. You're
dream.
30.
I don't know what was worse, the fact that I made that sound like I was MLK or that I said no cap.
Yeah, I chose to let that go in the moment, but I'm glad you said it.
I don't know which one was worse.
You phrased that horribly. By the way, speaking of dreams, your nightmare is the Patriots make a trade while you're in the car?
It's
going back to something you said on PU.
Yeah, we can talk about that. We can talk about traffic. We spent about 30 minutes at the end of PU talking about anything but football, and that is reflective, Alex, about this time of year right now in the NFL. But the Patriots, leave them to it, still somehow in headlines, even in the middle on June 22nd. We still have some things to talk about. Evan Lazar.
We got news today. We got news right before the show.
Yeah, we'll get it to it. Evan Lazar, Alex Barth, Patriots Catch-22, here with you for the next hour let's call it hour and 30. We don't have a 2-hour show in us today, I don't think.
I mean, we say that, but it's us.
That's true. You can join in on the fun at web radio at patriots.com or 855-PATS-500 is the telephone number. But a few little things, a few little housekeeping items, and then we can talk about traffic and the submarine and Marcus Smart and other things too as well. But first things first, you just mentioned that there was a little bit of news just now from the Patriots side of things. Training camp, official.
Yep.
Official, July 26th, open to training camp. Veterans report on July 25th. Then July 26th, the first day. The 26th through the 28th are the first 3 days of camp that are announced now on Patriots.com. You can come, open to the public. We'll obviously be there. We'll have shows. We'll break it all down. It'll be a lot of fun. So the way that the rules work now, just to kind of set the stage for the first week or so of training camp, you can't be in full pads right away. So the first 3 days, and I think this is why they announced it in this structure, the first 3 days will be non-padded sessions, basically an extension of minicamp.
Yep.
I do think that the third day,
Bill will say is still a teaching period.
Yeah, I think the third day you can put on shells, but that not it's
still going to be a non-contact practice.
Right, we're not talking about like game day shells. We're talking about the soft pads.
Right.
So that can still happen, I think, but you can't put pads on the first day of pads, I guess is what I'm getting at to put this better. The first day of pads is likely to be like Sunday or Monday of the following week, depending on when you start your week. So that's really what we're looking at with training camp. I always love the first week or so of training camp, but I think that we always keep in mind that really the true competitive portion of camp doesn't start until that second week. And this year in particular, the joint practices are going to be really where I think a lot of things are going to be figured out. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a little bit about Jack Jones. I'm sure, Alex, you've written and said your takes about the legality and the sort of non-football side of Jack Jones. We're going to stick mostly to the football effect. I think that there's a ton to be said about the Jack Jones situation. We've talked about it a lot on PU, but I do think that the football conversation needs to be had as well. Do a little DeAndre Hopkins, take your calls, and we'll go from there. But I want to start with Jack Jones from a football standpoint. I think what's interesting about the way that things looked with Jack Jones out there and looking good and looking the part at outside corner in minicamp is that it felt like they had Christian Gonzalez on one side, Jack Jones on the other side, and then they were allowed to play all sorts of games in the middle of the field, right? Whether it's the slot, whether it was deep safety, strong safety, regardless, right? They had options. They had things that they could spin the dial on. They had different bodies that they could throw. They could go 3 safety, play safeties over the slot. They could play a true corner over the slot like a Marcus Jones or a Jonathan Jones. And I don't necessarily know if their win-loss total is affected by this. Like, I don't think the Patriots go from a 10-win team to an 8-win team because they lost or potentially losing Jack Jones. But I do think that there is a trickle-down effect on how they're going to have to allocate resources, that this domino effect could have a pretty big impact on the secondary, just in terms of who is playing where and what roles and how much flexibility they truly have. And I think the two guys that it affects the most just directly are Jonathan Jones and Jalen Mills, because now it feels like Jonathan Jones is going to have to go back to playing a little bit more on the perimeter as sort of that number 2 corner opposite of Christian Gonzalez. And Jalen Mills is going to have to most likely go back to playing corner. Like you always talk about, they usually have 3 outside guys in the rotation. Well, when you lose one of the 3 outside guys that was supposed to be in that rotation, you might not have the flexibility anymore to try Jalen Mills out at safety. You might need to move him back to corner. Now, maybe he plays a little bit of both, and he plays a lot, but that's a lot to play. Just in general, that's going to be like an 80% snap usage. But I think that that's where I'm coming at it, that it has the biggest impact from a football perspective, is they're just not. We talked all minicamp in spring about, they're so multiple and they got versatility and they got multiple options, and quarterbacks aren't going to know where guys are because they can spin the dial and they're going to be unpredictable. And I still think they'll have elements of that, but that was predicated on the 2 outside spots kind of not moving, right? Like we have these 2 things figured out, so we can spin the safeties. We can use different guys out of the slot. Now it gets a little bit more murky, and guys have to sort of fit into more of a concrete role, which does hurt the Patriots. The lack of smoke and mirrors can potentially really hurt this defense, I think, in the back end. But overall, I'm not looking at this like it swings the pendulum drastically one way or the other in terms of the bottom line.
Yeah, I think it might have more of an impact. I agree with everything you said. I just think it's going to have more of an impact than you're laying out there. The other guy it impacts is Kyle Duggar.
Yeah.
Because I think Jalen Mills is a guy they're going to have play some safety. Jonathan Jones looked like a guy they're going to have play some safety. When Jonathan Jones at safety, or if you want to call it the star position or whatever, Kyle Duggar was in the box. Now he's playing in the box less because he's got to go back. It basically bumps everybody back a rung, and I still think on the surface the defense is very good.
Yeah.
But if there was one weakness going into this, it was lack of depth in terms of true boundary corners. They really only had 2 established guys. And I mean, Christian Gonzalez isn't established, but 17th overall pick, right? So you had Christian Gonzalez, Jack Jones. Who was next? Who was their 3rd boundary corner after that?
It was probably moving Jalen Mills
It was
back.
either Jalen Mills or Jonathan Jones.
Right.
And then after those 2 guys, you get into Sean Wade,
Isaiah Bolden
and Ramir Speed are the next couple guys. Quandre Mosley maybe. So that falls off real quick.
Yeah.
And now you're taking a rung out of that ladder. So you're saying, I don't think this impacts the win-loss total or whatever. Like, on the surface, it doesn't. If Madden style, you turn off injuries, they're still fine.
Right.
But now, if Jonathan Jones gets hurt, or Jalen Mills gets hurt, or maybe Christian Gonzalez needs some time to kind of, get accustomed to the NFL game.
Right.
Now they're in big trouble because now they don't have those guys on the boundary. Now you're really starting to pull. Are you putting Marcus Jones back out there? Are you putting Miles Bryant out there? Are you putting Jabril Peppers out there?
Yeah.
Now it really starts to spiral on you. So I'd like to see them add another corner. I have a list of names up on 985thesportshub.com. The one I'll give you that I know this name's not like super sexy. I know it's not going to get everybody all hot and bothered, but I could see it. Remember Terrence Mitchell? Old friend Terrence Mitchell from last year?
I remember Terrence Mitchell, but he didn't even make the team last year.
Right.
Right.
But I go look at who's available would be my point.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's a guy I could see like at the very – I'm not saying – and that's kind of my point. I don't know that they're getting a guy that's fixing things. If you add Terrence Mitchell, he maybe helps buoy your depth a little bit, which they certainly could use, but this is just something now they're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, Terrence Mitchell's an odd name I had thought of, but that's a good poll. I think everybody looks at Marcus Peters, but they've had multiple opportunities at this point to get Marcus Peters if they were interested, and they've never really shown any sort
Right.
of interest in the player.
So most of the big name guys, there's Marcus Peters, who supposedly is finalizing a deal with the Ravens.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they've been finalizing it for like a week and a half now. So,
right. Who knows?
but the other thing is, if you get in a bidding war for Marcus Peters, where's that money coming from?
Yeah.
Suddenly, the DeAndre Hopkins money starts to go.
You don't want to really pay anybody,
Right?
Because you think that you're okay at the top of the depth chart, so you're really just looking for depth. Terrence Mitchell's a good.
So there's some other
suggestion.
guys who are maybe like have a little bit more of a resume.
Yeah.
Than Terrence Mitchell does, a guy like Ronald Darby, but he's coming off a torn ACL.
Right.
Kyle Fuller, same thing, coming off a torn ACL. I don't love that. I'd rather kind of go, because you're not looking for necessarily a boom. You're not necessarily looking for a hit. You just need somebody who's going to help carry your depth to the next step. And to me, that's a guy like Terrence Mitchell.
Yeah, it's a bummer because I think in a way, by drafting Christian Gonzalez, they almost upgraded 2 spots because they obviously upgraded the boundary corner spot, but they also upgraded the slot because it bumped Jonathan Jones back inside. So they got better in 2 areas by drafting one player, and now it feels like they probably are only going to get better in one area, and the trickle down or the depth effect that we're talking about, it lends yourself to Jalen Mills playing more on the outside again, where over the last couple of years, he's had his ups and downs playing true boundary corner. And it also lends yourself to Miles Bryant being back heavily in the rotation, which I think a lot of us had hoped that maybe they had evolved past Miles Bryant with the Joneses, with the young Joneses coming into the fold. So it's a tough pill to swallow from multiple directions. Obviously, the off-field and character direction is the biggest one, but from a football perspective, it does make an impact on the team, and it's going to be interesting to see how they go about handling some of these situations, I think, with that second outside corner spot, because the 2 primary options that I think that they have are Jonathan Jones kicking back outside or Jalen Mills kicking back to corner, right? Like those are really their 2 primary in-house options that they have. Just, I don't know if you have a third one that I'm not. I guess maybe one of the younger guys like Speed or Bolden come out of nowhere.
Well, I mean, I think we're going to be watching those guys a little bit closer in camp.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you can count on either of them just as rookies. Like, it's tough, but if one of them starts really starts making some plays in camp and getting into joint practice in the preseason, that's going to become a conversation. I think that's where a guy like Terrence Mitchell comes in to me. Is you sign Terrence Mitchell and you're not going to pay him a lot of money. You have him. He's also like those other guys, a guy like Roby, right? He has to learn the defense. Terrence Mitchell is at least starting from some sort of base. He was here last year. You have him. All right. If you need him, you have him. You have that emergency depth, but you go into camp and you say, if Amir Speed or Isaiah Bolden is going to show me something, then that's kind of the upside guy. That's the all right, well, we have Terrence Mitchell if we need him. We're not counting on either of these rookies. We probably just drafted to be special teamers, but if one of them shows up, and here we go, and now we're cooking. So that's where I'm at with it.
In minicamp, I did think that Isaiah Bolden, I don't know if he necessarily did anything that caught the eye in terms of his actual coverage, but there were some times where he bumped up to the second team defense from like the opportunity or the third team defense. Amir Speed was more stuck with the rookies and kind of guys that are projected at the back end of the roster. Bolden got an occasional rep with some other regulars, but not necessarily like the starting defense, right? Sort of that that mix and match second unit. They also both had spent extensive time on special teams. Some of the time, if I remember correctly, had some one-on-one with Matthew Slater, even. And that going through
Speed did, definitely.
Going through his ritual. So I think that there are some hope there that maybe those 2 guys can contribute on special teams. We've known that. We'll see about defense. I think that is a long shot in general, just for their entire NFL careers, frankly, but certainly a long shot in year 1 as rookies. But that's if you had to pick between moving Jalen Mills back to outside corner full-time or moving Jonathan Jones back outside full-time, which one would you pick as of June 22nd?
I'd probably move Jalen Mills back because he's closer to that. One, he's closer to it's more his natural position than it is Jonathan Jones.
Yeah.
And I guess this is like 1A. It's not necessarily a different thing. They need size on the boundary. They need size. You saw it too many times last year where Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones would stick to the receiver and really did all they could, but the receiver, 6'5" T. Higgins, and boom, here comes the jump ball, and you can't teach height. 5'8's 5'8", 5'10's 5'10", up against 6'5". So Jalen Mills gives you more competitive matchup in that. Now, depending on the opponent, I might go the other way. Like, obviously, when you play the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill, we'll see what happens with Tyreek Hill. But
it's a totally different animal.
When you play the Dolphins with Tyreek Hill, put Jonathan Jones on the outside because the Dolphins don't have any size. But I think they need to be open to both.
Yeah.
But ideally, you're putting Jalen Mills out there as your CB2, and you're continuing to use Jonathan Jones as kind of that rover, star, slot corner, whatever the hell you want to call it.
Yeah, I'm with you because I still think that Jonathan Jones is one of the better slot corners in the NFL when he's playing inside. And I also think from a communication standpoint, which is something that we've talked about off the air with replacing Devin McCourty, you can control the communication a little bit better from the middle of the field, right? And if he's more skewed towards the middle of the field and they want to give him controls of the back end a little bit like they did with Devin, kind of being that quarterback of the secondary, it's probably a little bit easier for him to make calls and see things and do things like that, playing in the slot and playing more of that nickel role than it is having him play on the outside. But that's where the Patriots are at, I think, with this situation. And I still, not to go into the legal mumbo jumbo of it all and everything, but I still just can't see a scenario where it makes sense for the football team to put Jack Jones out there while this is all going on. Like I can't really see that happening, even in training camp during practice, and we'll see how it ends up playing out. But those are sort of the options. I agree with you though that it's worth maybe bringing in another veteran corner. Terrence Mitchell's a good example because at least he's been here and has some experience in the system, and go from there, because you can't, if you're starting to have to count on like the Deshaun Wades and the Isaiah Boldens and the Mere Speeds, that's gonna get real dicey real fast.
You're in a little bit of trouble.
You're in a little bit of trouble. All right, let's go to DeAndre Hopkins, and then we'll take some of these calls. So the latest on DeAndre Hopkins, Diana Rossini, he had a report. She had a report this morning that was a little bit telling, a little bit wishy-washy, I thought, but mainly she stuck with what everybody else is saying, that he's going to take his time. This could be a couple weeks. This could be a month. We don't know exactly. But she indicated that the Titans and the Patriots remain the two most likely options. And she also indicated that they have both offered DeAndre Hopkins a contract, that there's a contract on the table from both teams for DeAndre Hopkins. I have been of the school of thought, and I don't know if you agree or not, that the longer this plays out, the worse it is for the Patriots.
Yes.
I think that more teams can get involved, injuries can happen. Unfortunately, as we have learned with the Jack Jones situation, life can happen, right? Where all of a sudden a team has an example, a hole at the wide receiver position and needs to make a move. So the longer this drags out, the worse it is for the Patriots. But at the same time, I think it is, if you want to be optimistic as a Patriot fan that DeAndre Hopkins is still coming here, it is a little bit optimistic that Rossini is reporting that it's still really just the Patriots and the Titans.
Well, but here's the problem.
There is no dark horse.
But that's the thing, because once there's another team, that team's not a dark horse, right?
Fair.
It's the Patriots and Titans until it isn't.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds simplistic and kind of dumb, but isn't that what it is?
Yeah.
It's the Patriots and Titans until the Chiefs have a wide receiver go down in camp, or the Eagles have a wide receiver go down in camp. Not wishing this on anybody, but this is what happens. Happens, right? Stuff happens.
Yeah, I get where people are. I get where the reports are coming from. That the reports are out there that he is prepared to wait, like maybe even into training camp. That he's in no rush to sign,
which he shouldn't be. It doesn't make any sense for him to rush at this point.
I'm not 100% believing that if he's planning on playing next year, which it certainly sounds like he is, I'm not 100% believing that he's going to drag this out into training camp. Like, I think he's signed some, like we just announced this morning that July 26th, the opening day of the Patriots camp, I think he's signed by July 25th.
I think he's signed by week 1 of the preseason. I could see him giving it a week, maybe 2.
So this brings up like another thing that's come up a lot with him.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to practice. So how much of that is that he is opening up the door for more teams to get involved? And how much of that is that DeAndre Hopkins at 31 years old just doesn't want to go through the dog days of training camp?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think it's ultimately a little bit of both. And by the way, him not liking practice and him being a detriment to the team are two different things.
Yeah.
People are acting like they're the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't like, there's things you don't like to do for your job, but you do,
right.
even if you like your job like we do. So
there are very few players, I got to be honest with you, that I've talked to over the years that like to practice.
Right. Exactly. So
it's the grueling part of the job.
DeAndre Hopkins can afford to miss a week of what's going to be mostly unpadded practices.
Yeah.
That's not a huge deal. You want him here for the joint practices. Those are the big ones, as we always talk about. That's the most important time of the preseason is the joint practices, which is, again, I go August 1st or the first preseason game. Like, that's kind of where I look. Now, that's not to say he's definitely going to wait until then. Maybe he does sign sooner, but if he's still unsigned, it's like, August 2nd, 3rd, I'm going to be like, all right, now we're probably getting close, but it wouldn't surprise me.
I don't think he's a Patriot if that's the case.
I agree with you.
I think if this gets into camp, I think for two reasons. I think both sides move on at that point, honestly. I think.
Well, what is moving on for the Patriots?
Well, when I say
sign Jarvis Landry?
No. I don't think they're going to move on to another edition. I think they move on with the group that they have. I think at that point, I still think that Bill operates under sort of like either you're on the bus or you're not.
Yeah, I
right?
know, but it's just you'd hope there's the recognition that they need this guy.
I agree, but I think it's a little like an acquisition is different in terms of a trade, right? Like if a guy's on another team and you trade for him at the end of camp, like that's that's just the timing of the move or the deadline or something like that. But I think that they're going to look at it and say, we'd love to have you, but if you're not here by let's call it July 26th, we have Parker, we have Juju, we have Thornton, we have Kendrick Bourne. We like our group. We don't love it, but we like our group, and we're done.
I just think that would be short-sighted. I don't necessarily disagree with you that they would do it, but I think they would be I think that would be short-sighted.
Because from Hopkins' camp, it makes more sense that if he waits that long, he's not coming here. He's going to go to Kansas City or he's going to go to some contender, right? That gets
not necessarily.
I think if you're like waiting through like the Titans and the Patriots, for example, like I still and even like curmudgeons like Paul, like he says that to him it's a toss up. I still can't really understand the argument for the Titans. I can't see it. They're not going to be a good football team.
No salary, no income tax.
Okay, but like I'm talking about the football.
I don't think he's considering the football side of things.
I think he's got to consider it at least a little bit.
Maybe a little bit, but I think maybe that's what it is. Maybe Tennessee, with the lack of income tax, is offering him slightly more money.
I guess,
but the Patriots are the better football situation because they are.
They are the better team. And the Patriots are not the better team.
Better team.
In every case, I'm not saying the Patriots are some great team.
Better quarterback.
Yeah, they're just the better situation from a football standpoint all around. They're going to be a more competitive, more likely playoff-bound football team.
Right, but if he just wants the money and the Titans are offering more money, this is where it's.
I suppose
it's. Do you want to go through a dog days of a season in Tennessee and get paid more, or do you take a little less and maybe you play in a couple big games?
I think for
probably
him,
what it's down to for him.
I don't know. I can't imagine like that is a type of guy, and we saw this in last year with Arizona. He will let go of the rope. So in Tennessee, he's literally taking a check and running with it.
Right, but does he care? Maybe that's all he wants to do.
I guess. I don't know.
I would
think higher of him than that, I guess.
I do too, but I also wouldn't blame him. It's his last chance to get paid.
Right, but he's not going to get paid. We're talking about from all of the indications that we have, if that Odell Beckham contract was out there for him, the one for 15 with incentives to push it to 18, I think is what Odell got. Yeah. I think he'd already be signed. I don't think he's getting that offer. And that I think is what's holding this up, is that he his market is soft, and I think that he sees the only leverage that he's going to get is if somebody gets hurt.
No, I still think he's just waiting on leverage, whatever the situation is. What? Let me put it this way. Why should he sign now? If he knows that let's say the 1 year, $15 million is out there. He knows it's still going to be out there in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks.
Oh, no, he shouldn't be in any rush, and I really don't think that the Patriots need to be in any rush either because everybody's off on summer break. Right? Mike Gesicki's jumping off boats in Italy. Like, no one's here.
No, but the rush for the Patriots is, as long as he remains unsigned, there's still time for other teams to get involved, or the Titans to up their offer, frankly.
Yeah.
And the Patriots should be able to outbid the Titans because of the salary cap. But I said this on the show last week, Evan. I wrote on 98.5 The Sports Hub 9 things to do while you're waiting for DeAndre Hopkins to sign.
Did you have watch submarine footage on there?
I did not have that because it hadn't happened yet. It would have been on there.
You should really add that back on there.
Maybe I should. Well, I said on Twitter,
it's
like,
kind of over now, apparently. So.
Well, they have press conference in like half an hour.
Are they calling off the search?
No, they found something.
They didn't find
They
anything. Found like a shipwreck that could be anything.
So that's the thing. They said they found debris around the Titanic, but it's like, yeah, it's the wreck of the Titanic. Of course there's debris. So I'm very curious. But, like,
this
it's
is the
also
stupidest story ever.
I feel like you wouldn't say that if it was, like, that whole area has been mapped so much in the last, like, whatever it is, 40 years. No. Anyway, the point being.
What's more likely, they find the submarine or DeAndre Hopkins signs with the Patriots?
I did not have track the submarine. What I did have was track private flights out of Houston, because all it takes is one phone call and suddenly he's off. Again, I said this on the show last week, Evan. I do not understand how the Jacksonville Jaguars are not blowing up his phone right now. And there's a handful of other teams that it would make sense for as well that have some cap. Another one I thought of is Seattle. I didn't know that he'd go to Seattle, but like Seattle, right?
Well, they did. I mean, they just drafted JSN. They have Lockett. They have DK. Like, they're pretty loaded.
They've been trying to trade Lockett, though. That's kind of been the rumor.
Yeah.
So you sign Hopkins for nothing.
You sign a 31-year-old Hopkins to trade a 31-year-old Lockett?
Well, if they're going to make the same money and you can trade Lockett and get a draft pick.
I guess.
You're better. Like, Hopkins is better, so you have a
I
better.
Guess, maybe
anyway,
a little bit.
The point being.
I like Lockett.
I do, too, but Hopkins is probably better.
Maybe a little bit.
I mean, come on. DK, JSN, Hopkins.
I think that Lockett might be better for what to pair with DK, though. Like, regardless.
Anyway.
This is, not unrelated.
All it takes is one team to call them and say, hey, we want into the DeAndre Hopkins business. You know, what's the price? What's the number you got from the Patriots? We'll match it. We'll top it. And the only way the Patriots can stop that is sign him.
Yeah.
Because once you sign him, that's tampering. That was a joke.
I know.
But once you sign him, that's the only way to stop other teams from calling him.
I guess I hear that, and I agree with you. So then I guess my next question to this is, like, if you're the Patriots, I understand that you don't want to bid against yourselves, and there's a degree of you don't want to overpay for the player. And I can agree to that, or to an extent. And we don't know what the terms are that the Patriots discuss with DeAndre. Maybe the Patriots are giving him fair or even beyond fair terms in terms of the contract, and he's just dragging his feet anyways. But if I'm the Patriots, I just got to show some urgency here. I gotta. There has to be a number. And I'm not talking about giving him $25 million, but there has to be a number that gets DeAndre Hopkins to just sign and not wait.
That's what I've been saying. At what point do the Patriots go to that number?
Yeah, find that number. All right, we're going to take some of these calls, then we're going to talk some AFC East previews. We decided in this dead period we'll go around the AFC East. I like this exercise. It's good to study up on the other teams, because we are going to talk a ton about all these teams once we get into the season and into the matchups for the Patriots. So today we're gonna start with those pesky Dolphins down in Miami. So we'll get to that here in a second. Dolphins are not friendly animals, Alex. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
They're nasty.
Wait, well, I mean, they're not great, but are you sure you're not thinking of whales?
No, dolphins are bad, man.
Well, there's that story about the killer whales attacking the boats.
Yeah, but dolphins are bad.
Dolphins can be kind of nasty. Well, they're really smart, so they know how to
I don't want to get into some of the weird stuff that dolphins do. Anyways, let's talk to Willem and Phil. Oh, no, we lost him. Oh, he was probably calling in to PU. I think he called in earlier. That's all right. What's up, Patty? How you doing?
What's up, gentlemen?
Good.
So, over the past couple of weeks, I think you guys know where I stood on DeAndre Hopkins, but the more the time's gone by, I've thought about it, and if nothing else, I think like the fact that he's probably still really good. He could probably still really have the defense, have their coverage focused on him, and will probably open up stuff a lot better for guys like Tyquan if he's healthy, obviously Juju if he's healthy, and Mike Gesicki and everybody else. So the more I'm thinking about it, the more I would like to see him on this team, just because like Devontae Parker doesn't do that for you. You know what I mean? And I love Parker. Like I loved him when he was in Miami, and I wanted him here, but he's just not the same player as DeAndre.
Yeah, I think we're with you, Patty. Thanks for the call. That's the biggest thing for this Patriots team, and we talk a lot about even just like Bill O'Brien's offense during minicamp and OTAs. You could see that the attention was back to trying to win in the middle of the field, trying to win with efficient passing, and not necessarily I used to call it the Bruce Arians offense that they were trying to run last year, which was peaks and valleys. You do have some downfield completions, but you also have a lot of turnovers and a lot of 3-and-outs and things like that. In camp or in the spring, I think we agree with this on this, Alex, that it seemed like they were trying to get back to that middle of the field, death by 1,000 paper cuts, efficient Patriots offense, which should suit the quarterback and should suit the personnel. But in order to get the middle of the field open and to have it be less crowded, I don't know any better way than to have somebody on the outside like DeAndre Hopkins that can draw some of that attention and some of that coverage. And that's always been my biggest thing. I think the actual individual production of DeAndre Hopkins, I'm not sure I'm as caught up in, is he going to go for 1,000 yards? Is he going to have 10 touchdowns? Like, I don't know what his statistical ceiling is with the Patriots, but I do know that the sort of like we were talking about it with the secondary and with Jack Jones, the domino effect that he's going to have on the rest of the offense to open things up for everybody else. It just kind of puts everybody together. It puts all the pieces in the right spots, and it makes things easier for everybody else. He tweeted that out, right? His next team it'll be easier to play.
I was going to say, he said, my promise to my future receiver room, I'm going to make all your jobs easier. Exactly. That's the whole point. You're guaranteeing all those guys one-on-ones, and the Patriots have a bunch of number twos that can win one-on-ones regularly enough to be effective, but you got to get Hopkins in the building to make that happen.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Devontae Parker? Because I still think Devontae Parker's an NFL receiver. When I say an NFL receiver, I mean like a guy that can play top 3 snaps, right? Most teams have 3 guys that they play a lot. And I still think Devontae Parker is a top 3 guy and probably would get traded. Maybe it's Kendrick Bourne, but one of those guys probably gets moved so that they can go be a top 3 guy someplace else if Hopkins comes here. But there are moments, and even last year with all the mess that was going on, where you do look at it and say, Devontae Parker, probably their best one-on-one outside receiver, right? Just versus a press corner, me versus you, like who's the one guy that can kind of get up the field, get open, and make a play on the football? He was probably the best at that last year, and probably still the best that they have on the team this year. And we've talked so much about Kendrick Bourne and the fallout from that. We also had Michael Lombardi, which I thought was interesting, talking about how Hopkins might be better suited now to play more inside than outside just because his speed is diminishing. I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with that, but I don't know if it's as cut and dry to maybe reading a little bit too much into Lombardi, but sometimes he does talk to Bill, and maybe he does have some insight into how the Patriots might view him and use Hopkins more. I still am not 100% certain which direction they would go in terms of their receiver depth, like if it would be Parker or if it would be Bourne.
I still think it's Parker. They're going to play Hopkins outside. Like, I get that. You move him inside, but so then it's Juju on the boundary with Tyquan at the X, or like...
Yeah, it's probably Tyquan at the X. I think Juju or Hopkins is like technically your Z, right? Just think and then one of them is at the pure slot.
The whole point of this is you're trying to take pressure off Tyquan needing to have that breakout season. And I think if you're going to play Hopkins in the slot full time, you don't really do that, at least not as much. So I still think Parker's the odd man out. Hopkins is still your X. I think they'd probably use a bunch of condensed formations, honestly, which they should do anyway.
Yeah.
But, Yeah, and to your first question, what do I think of Parker? I still like Parker. I think he's a good receiver. But this whole thing we're talking about, well, I just saw myself on YouTube. I'm like bright. I didn't, and somebody in chat, I did not wear Grizzlies colors for Marcus Smart. That was an accident.
We'll get to that later.
We will get to that later. The whole thing with Parker, in this whole thing we're talking about of, well, can they get a receiver who's going to take pressure off the other guys? Last year, teams kind of started tight on Jacoby, and Jacoby was the guy that was getting all the attention, and Parker had some big games. He did. He had that massive,
Baltimore.
that massive game against the Ravens. He was excellent in that game.
Yeah.
So then what did teams do? They started shading to Parker instead of Jacoby Myers, and it didn't, it changed things schematically, but the offense didn't become any more impactful. Yeah. So, with Hopkins isn't the guy that you can do that with. Just because somebody else is playing well, you're not going to start taking coverage off of DeAndre Hopkins, because if you do, he's going to beat you bad if you leave him one-on-one. You cannot leave that guy one-on-one. That's ultimately the difference. That's what they really need. And the evidence is there last year that Parker is maybe close to being that guy, but he's not that guy.
I'm preparing myself mentally for the fact that they, based off of last year, and I guess this is just last year, and maybe it's all thrown out with Bill O'Brien in the building, and it's his show now, and he makes different decisions. But based off of the calendar year that we've had, they seem to really like Devontae Parker, just in terms of what he brings to the table football-wise.
Yeah. And
Kendrick Bourne just isn't their type of guy in terms of what he doesn't, off the field and in the media and things like that, right? And I'm really mentally preparing, but also hoping that they don't allow that to impact the decision. Whereas Parker's really gone about his business here for the most part. He's a quieter guy to begin with, but he's just kind of played his role, gone about his business, been mostly available. I don't think he was available for every game last year, but mostly available, and doesn't really do any of the diva stuff that Kendrick Bourne sometimes is susceptible
Let's not get into that. You use that word, and you're getting all these people hot and bothered.
I'm just saying that I'm preparing myself for that being the case.
I can't watch Kendrick Bourne and Marcus Smart both leave within months of each other. That's going to be too much for me. Second of all, the other important thing to consider here is, and they're going to consider this might be the ultimate trump card. They save about $2 million more against the cap if they move on from Parker than Bourne, which I think is ultimately what it comes down to.
I don't think that he has. I'm not saying you're going to get a first-round pick for Devontae Parker, but I think that both those guys might have a little bit of trade value.
I think Parker you can get back what you gave up for him.
Yeah, or I always like those trades where another guy has fallen out of the rotation someplace else, and they're probably going to cut him.
Right, maybe they trade him for a corner.
So you trade him for a corner, you trade him for a tackle. I don't know if a tackle is going to be playable, honestly, just with the tackle depth around the league. But if a tackle comes available, if a corner comes available, I always like those types of moves. I think they benefit both sides. I really do. I always go back with this to
Jacoby Brissett,
Philip Dorsett.
Yeah.
Right, that move at the time helped the Patriots. Philip Dorsett was a helpful piece for you in 2018. That was 18, right? Or is that 17?
No, it was 18.
I think it was 18.
Well, no, it was 17 because Brissett was only here for a year. So Brady was suspended in 16.
All I know is that Philip Dorsett in 18 made some big catches in
maybe
the playoffs.
It was 18.
I think it was
Jacoby
18.
Here for 2 years?
I think it was 18. Well, he was here for a year plus, right? I think he was only here for. Well, he started.
No, it was 17. It was 17. So they
17.
traded Jacoby Brissett and Jimmy Garoppolo the same season.
Yes, they did.
Forgot about that.
Yeah. So I like those moves. I think they tried that, and maybe it still works out with Chase Winovich and Mack Wilson. Different time of year, but similar type of thing. All right, William's back. What's up, William?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, how you doing, Evan? How you doing?
Good.
What's up, Alex?
Hey.
Hey. Just two questions. I'm not gonna hold you up anything. One, well, not so much a question. The second one is a question, but the first one is, what is going on? So what? Bill's just waiting for. Well, you waiting for some deal? You waiting for Hopkins to cave in and just say, take what's on the table? I don't even know. Do y'all know what he's offering Hopkins? You know what I mean? That may. I don't know.
I don't know exactly what he's offering, William, but based off of the reports and some of the indications that we have is that The deal that Hopkins is hoping to get, at least right now, is something similar to what the Ravens gave Odell Beckham, which is that 1 for 15 plus incentives to get up to like 18, 19 million. And so far, based off the reporting, that deal has not been out there for Hopkins, even from the Patriots or the Titans.
Okay. All right. Alex, my question to you is, I get it, okay? I guess you say you don't know why Jacksonville is not jumping at this. I understand that, but because I'm a Patriots fan, dog fan, I just want to see Hopkins or Dalvin Cook, whoever. I mean, the Patriots have holes in it. If we going in with this, it's not looking good for us. It's just really not. This offseason has been horrible for us. It just don't look good, Alex. So I'll leave it at that, fellas. Take care, okay?
Thanks, William. Appreciate it. I want to get to Dalvin Cook in a second.
I do want to get to Dalvin Cook.
I don't think
as well.
we're on the record here on the podcast on our feelings on
I don't
Dalvin
think
Cook.
I've talked about him on any show.
So we'll get to that in a second. I'm with William too. This is just not how they operate. The Patriots are just not going to come in and offer Hopkins, back up the Brinks truck, so to speak, and give him what he wants to get him off the market. They're going to play the game. They're going to roll the dice. That do you disagree? Like, I feel like that's just what they've always done. The only time that I can think of off the top of my head where they really went out and just gave a guy top of market money and said nothing of, no fooling around was Stephon Gilmore. Like, Stephon Gilmore was day one of free agency, opening morning of free agency. Like, here's the bag. Let's do it, right? I guess in 21 they did that for a couple guys too, but it's a totally different situation, I think, based off of what we're going off of now. But I don't know if they're necessarily going to do it. Dalvin Cook, where do you stand on Dalvin Cook? Because he's a name. He's a popular name. He's a free agency, a fantasy football running back. He's a free agent. There are some interest. There's some rumors that some other AFC East teams are going to be kicking the tires. The Jets and the Dolphins have been in touch or have had conversations with Dalvin Cook. My whole thing is, you know how I feel about running backs.
Yep.
You know how I feel about paying running backs.
Yep.
Bad business. On top of that, I don't see how Ramondre and Dalvin Cook really complement each other, and therefore it's tough to envision them playing together or that being like some sort of dynamic duo. Like,
what is getting Dalvin Cook do?
Right.
And like the caller said, we need stars. Okay, but this isn't a position like receiver where you're putting everybody on the field.
Right.
So, honestly, who's better at this point, Ramondre or Dalvin Cook? It's pretty close.
It's close.
But they're not going to put both of them on the field. At that point, in an offense that already seems to be designed to be very two tight end heavy, you're redesigning the entire offense, which you don't do at this time of year.
That to me is Dalvin Cook. We always talk about this, like it's like playing Madden, right? Like you're just collecting talent.
No, but
even
even in Madden, if I had Ramondre Stevenson, I wouldn't sign Dalvin Cook because only one of them can play at a time.
Yeah, the better comparison is when we were talking when we were in the height of draft season.
Yeah.
And Jahmyr Gibbs' name came up. You can see how Jahmyr Gibbs and Ramondre Stevenson could be this thunder and lightning and play off of each other, and Gibbs could play some receiver, and that would allow you to run some what would be considered two running back, but it's kind of different. It's this sort of middle thing, different sort of animal. Dalvin Cook and Ramondre Stevenson are like the same type of back.
So people hear you say that and say, well, they need to lessen Ramondre Stevenson's workload, so that's perfect. When he has to come off the field, you have another guy that's talented, and that's all well and good. And look, if Dalvin Cook's going to come for $1 million, $2 million, fine. He's a good football player. If you can add, I'll never say no to adding a good football player to the team, right? But are you going to pay Dalvin Cook the role that we're talking about is what, 15 snaps a game?
It's more like carries, right? Like it's more like 8 to 10 carries a game.
8 to 10 carries a game.
Yeah.
Are you going to pay $5-6 million for
No.
that? Because keep in mind, if you do that, there goes the Hopkins money.
Right.
You're not getting both these guys.
Move
all the talk about them joining the same team is for social media likes. It's not happening because they both want to get paid, and no team, the teams that have that kind of money to spend, are trying to get Caleb Williams. They're not interested in bringing either guy in.
Yeah.
So That's not going to happen. At that point, yeah, I'll take the drop-off to Ty Montgomery. I'll take the drop-off to Kevin Harris. I'll take the drop-off to Pierre Strong. Adding Dalvin Cook does not make them a better football team. He's a good player. He's better than some of the players they have, but they would not be a better football team by adding him for what he's ultimately going to want. Again, if he wants to sign for $2 million, I don't care. Sign him for $2 million.
If this was 20 years ago when LaDainian Tomlinson and Priest Holmes and Sean Alexander were toting the rock 300 times a year, and you said, let's give 150 to Dalvin Cook and 150 to Ramondre Stevenson, and we're going to be this...
the old Jonathan Stewart, D'Angelo Williams kind of offense.
Right, and then maybe. But that's just not the type of football that you play anymore, and it's just not the way that the league is trending, and I don't see it being really beneficial. I don't think that makes you this high-powered offense.
It doesn't, because it's the way the position works. And neither of them can really play receiver. Yeah. And even if they did, you'd have to rewrite the offense, which, again, you don't do right now.
Ramondre is maybe a little bit better of a natural. Dalvin Cook's a really good screen back.
But neither of them are receivers.
No, neither one of them are true natural.
If they were going to take $5 million and give it to Dalvin Cook, I would say take that $5 million, put it on top of what you were going to give DeAndre Hopkins, and see if you can get him to sign right now. That would be a much better. Yeah. Am I wrong? That would be a much better use of that money than trying to sign Dalvin Cook.
Yeah. Last thing on Dalvin Cook. So the two teams that have shown a little bit of interest in him, the Jets and the Dolphins, is what the reports are now are kicking the tires. They're both in the Shanahan tree. Nathaniel Hackett is running the offense now with the Jets under Robert Saleh, who obviously was the defensive coordinator for Kyle Shanahan out in San Francisco. And Nathaniel Hackett comes from Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, right? So there's a lot of connections to that West Coast outside zone system. And then in Miami, obviously they have McDaniel running Kyle Shanahan's offense essentially. So Dalvin Cook in Minnesota played most of his career under Norv Turner and then in the Norv Turner outside zone system. What I'm getting at is that Dalvin Cook is a zone back. He is a zone running back. He is a one cut and go type of running back. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have overlap there and it's not football's football to an extent, but he doesn't naturally fit into a gap scheme team. And if you want the Patriots to get back to pull the guard, get downhill, blow guys off the ball, run that man power, gap, whatever you want to call it, type of offense, and not be the outside zone mess that we saw last year, that is not what Dalvin Cook does best.
Right.
So he's going to go from this Kevin O'Connell, Norv Turner system and kind of lineage probably to the Shanahan tree. And that's going to be a pretty good transition for him. Him coming here, it would be significantly different than the things that he did in Minnesota, just from a schematic standpoint. So I don't think that that's the end-all, be-all, especially with running backs, because it's you get the ball and run. It's not really that much of a change, but I think it is worth mentioning that based off the teams that are showing interest in him, based off of his history in Minnesota, it seems like the league views him as a zone back, and they're not going to be a lot of teams that are going to be looking for him to be a downhill runner. So we'll see. I think that one has a 0% chance of happening. I never say 0, so let's say 1% chance of happening, but I don't want people to get infatuated with the names. We kind of threw out some other running backs. I guess they are kind of names too, like Zeke Elliott's a little bit of a name. Leonard Fournette certainly has a.
I gave you Reggie Corbin. You rolled your eyes at that.
No, come on, stop it. Let's get a real NFL player in here.
You want my list?
Yeah, I want your list because I still come back to this. I still think the more that I dwell on it and the more that I think about their running back situation, I think that they need another guy.
So these aren't necessarily the guys I would sign. These are the guys that, it's Dalvin Cook, and then just the guys you could make a case for. I wouldn't necessarily sign all of them, but the guys you can make a case for. Leonard Fournette.
Yep.
I know you like Ezekiel Elliott. I like Mark Ingram.
A little old, right? He's 33.
I don't really care.
Okay.
Bowling ball.
Okay.
Bowling ball. He could be a 1-for-1 replacement for Damian Harris.
Okay.
I don't doubt that.
I love Mark Ingram in terms of his career, but he's
I also just think getting a veteran like that in the locker room would be good. Rex Burkhead. is technically a free agent.
Yeah, he's had a lot of injuries. Okay.
He is only 32. I wouldn't do it like you said because of the injuries, but I could totally see them bringing Rex Burkhead back for a second stint. That's something they would do. Kenyon Drake, who by the way is only 29.
I like Kenyon Drake. He has a little bit more versatility, I think, than some of these other guys. Okay.
Plays special teams.
Yep.
Marlon Mack.
What happened to Marlon Mack?
Tore his Achilles. Like 3 years ago, and he just hasn't been the same player
We
since.
did that once already. No, thank you.
Well, that's but that's why he's on this list. If they thought James Robinson, if the idea was like, here's a guy who tore his Achilles a couple years ago, let's see if he's over it, Marlon Mack would essentially be the same line of thinking as James Robinson.
Repeating the same mistake.
Well, his was actually further back. His torn Achilles was further back. So, and when he was in his prime, I mean, he's
a good player.
Legit.
Yeah.
Benny Snell.
Bowling ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my list.
Okay. So I still
and Reggie Corbin.
If you can get Zeke on a discount, then Zeke's the best player out of that group besides Dalvin Cook, obviously. I still lean like Leonard Fournette might be the best bet all around for them. Just price, need, that type of thing. And they've shown interest in the player in the past. So that's something that also stands out to me with Fournette. I just look at their running back depth chart. You have Ramondre at the top. Then you really have three, and you have 5 guys under contract, including J.J. Taylor. But J.J. Taylor is a practice squad guy. He's a practice squad guy in case of emergency back. I just don't look at him and see a guy that's ever going to really be a rotational piece in an NFL backfield, to be honest.
Yeah.
Kevin Harris, Pierre Strong, Ty Montgomery. That's a ton of uncertainty. Now, I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth a little bit with running backs because I'm usually of the school of thought that they're a dime a dozen. They're all replaceable for the most part. So there shouldn't be a big difference between Kevin Harris and Leonard Fournette, right? Like even though Kevin Harris has not carried the football, I think he has like 18 career carries from last year or something like that. There still shouldn't be a big difference. But I don't know what we have yet in the second-year running backs. You don't know what you have yet in the second-year running backs. And Ty Montgomery really hasn't been productive in the NFL for like 4 years. And he's looked great in the spring. He looked great in the summer last year. Like he's looked like he's been pushing for a role for 2 straight spring and summers now. But the last time that Ty Montgomery had like a useful NFL season was like 2018 with the Packers. So
yeah. So I agree with you on.
There's so much uncertainty with that spot.
I agree with you on Montgomery. What I will say about the 2 guys they drafted, right, the 2 younger guys, Strong and Harris, you got to give them a shot.
I agree.
You can't draft guys, and they did this for a few years, and it's part of the reason I think they're in the spot where they are now. Maybe Juwan Williams was always destined to be a bust, but the fact he never really got any true NFL snaps until his 3rd year, there's a reason he looked like a rookie as a 3rd-year player because he didn't have any experience.
Yeah.
He was experiencing it like a rookie. It hampers players' developments. Now, a red shirt for certain guys who are developmental players, that's one thing, and I think to an extent, Pierre Strong was that. Kevin Harris, there might have been some concerns about his back.
Yeah.
But you got to play these guys. You've got to play these guys to figure out if they're the real deal or not. Otherwise, you're just flushing those picks. So I think they're in a spot where they can kind of afford to do that. Let them play, see what happens.
It's risky. It's risky because you don't want to. First of all, absolute worst case scenario, Ramondre goes down with an injury, and you're only left with these 3 guys, right?
Right.
Best case scenario, are they able to truly step up and spell Ramondre to the point where he's not worn down by the end of the year like last year? It's risky, but I agree with you for the most part that they should just let it roll. But at the end of the day, they only have 5 backs on the roster, and they like to carry 4. So
or 3.
When we start talking about right, but usually they carry 4 out of camp.
How many did they carry last year?
I think they carried 4, but then injuries happened.
And then Ty Montgomery got hurt. Yeah.
So they like to carry 4 out of camp. I don't think J.J. Taylor is a real roster consideration at this point. So you kind of have like 4 guys that are just going through it right now, right? Like they're going to just be on the team. You're an injury away from having a problem there. And at this point, isn't it better to just get the guy in for training camp and get him up to speed than to try to sign Leonard Fournette in week 3?
But then, no. So you're burning a spot on a running back that's not going to play at that point.
I guess
I was literally going to say to you, what are the chances that Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott are all unsigned heading into the regular season? I think there's a chance that at least a couple of those guys are available.
I think Dalvin will sign, but at this point, Zeke and Fournette haven't signed, so those two guys are what Hopkins is hoping is going to happen somebody's going to get hurt.
So, okay, no, it's a little different. Hopkins is not waiting until the regular season.
No.
Those two guys I could see missing the entire preseason, Fournette and Elliott. Because at the end of the day, they don't want to take the beating.
Right.
They don't want to take any beating they don't have to. They might wait a couple weeks to sign. If I'm the Patriots, I'm fine with that. They can pick up that part of the offense. You're not going to ask them to pass block. You're not going to ask them to do anything that overly complicated. You're just going to ask them to eat up some carries.
Yeah.
I'd rather go in with the 4. As kind of weird as this sounds, because I know he's the worst player of the group, the guy I'd upgrade is J.J. Taylor. Can you get a better guy that you're going to – because Taylor's role right now is you're going to put him on the practice squad, and if injuries pile up, you're going to elevate him, and he's been in the offense.
Yeah.
Can you find a better player for that role? That could be Benny Snell. That could be Marlon Mack. That could be Kenyon Drake. That could be Reggie Corbin. That is the role I think that makes the most sense for them to upgrade right now. Just get a better player than J.J. Taylor to stick on the practice squad.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not as worried. I got to be honest. I'm not as worried about the two second-year guys. Like, I think Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong, that we have seen this movie before where guys that don't play as rookies or are rookies, like, Pacheco last year at the Chiefs, right? Like, just give them a chance, and those guys can produce. Ty Montgomery, I don't want to go like I remember last summer I took the cheese on Ty Montgomery and he got hurt, right? And that's not necessarily a bad evaluation on anybody's part. We all were kind of like, oh, this guy's going to be a contributor this year. But you look back at his stats and it is really true that he has not contributed to an NFL offense in a major way in quite some time at this point. And you're putting a ton of eggs in his basket right now as being that third down back. All right, we're going to get to one more call here, and then we'll talk some Miami Dolphins. Sean in Vancouver. What's up, Sean?
Hey, earlier on PU, someone sent in a question about which former Patriot who never played under Belichick, one player you'd take in that category to add to this team. And, Andre Tipp is my favorite player of all time. Evan, I love your pick of Stanley Morgan. Haynes, amazing cornerback, maybe one of the best. And the one guy I would take, and I would think like 40 other Patriots I like better than this player, but because of the team that we have, because of the needs, I'd go with Brian Holloway. And I know he'd be undersized today, and I know a lot of his success had to do with being next to John Hanna. But they need a tackle. I mean, that's my biggest concern.
Right, so you go with Brian Holloway over Bruce Armstrong if we're going to go tackle?
Bruce Armstrong played in 2000. You can't count him.
He played in 2000?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was on the team.
This was last year.
Oh, my gosh. Jeez.
Do you
How
not
long
know,
did he play for?
So the chain of...
Not long, but it was there.
The chain of most games ever played by a Patriot is continuous. So, hang on. I'm trying to find the exact list. Okay. So, ready for this?
Yes.
So, the most games played by a Patriot who was on the initial team was Gino Cappelletti. Gino Cappelletti played until 1969 when he was teammates with, I might be missing a rung here, but basically he was teammates with John Hanna. John Hanna's rookie year. The year John Hanna retired, Bruce Armstrong was a rookie. He then broke Hanna's record for the most games played as a Patriot. And then in Hanna's final year, when he broke the record, Brady was a rookie. So the next person, in theory, to play the most games ever as a Patriot who will break Brady was a rookie in 2019, but nobody from the 2019 draft class is left on the team.
So
I am just realizing that last part now as I said it.
So I'm not hallucinating that Bruce Armstrong and John Hanna played together, right? For a period of time. So Bruce Armstrong had...
Did he? Maybe.
I got to find this. I think I missed a link
in
that. But I'm going to look it up real quick, Evan. Stop for a second.
So I just looked it up, and you're right that Armstrong was on the 2000 Patriots. So he played for 13 seasons.
That I knew.
I did not realize that he played. He went from 87 to 2000.
I don't think he played a ton in 2000. I think he missed him. Oh, no, he started all 16 games.
Yeah, so that was I did not
Yeah,
realize
I'd take him if I could, but that doesn't go by the parameters.
Yeah, interesting. All right. So yeah, I guess you have to get to another tackle.
Okay,
which is
here's
hard
what
to do.
and here's what I messed up. It was not it's not John Hanna who's the middle link in that chain. It's Julius Adams.
Julius Adams.
Oh,
That's another good one.
Yeah. So Gino, a couple guys had played the most games from 60 to 70. There were a couple guys around all those teams. And then Julius Adams. And then Julius Adams retired after the 1987 season. In 1987, Bruce Armstrong was a rookie. He played until 2000. Who was a rookie in 2000? Tom Brady.
Such a Barth
and now, because
thing.
I thought, so honestly, I'm looking at that, and Brady left, and I'm like, Jake Bailey's going to play like 400 games for the Patriots now and shatter that record. It was all lined up for it to be Jake Bailey, and then it wasn't.
There has to. Who was the tackle you mentioned again, Sean? I forget.
Brian Holloway.
Brian Holloway.
There's not a better tackle in Patriots history.
He was good. He was really good. But again, it's a lot of it. You got to count. He's right next to John Hanna, who's the best guard of all time, and
Right.
now he'd be too short. Like he was not too short. I mean too light.
Too small.
He was like
So John
285
Hanna, unfortunately.
or 6.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
they both
okay.
now.
I like your line of thinking though, Sean, and thanks for the call. We always appreciate it. Okay.
The point is, like, that's my concern is tackle.
No. I thought about tackle, and I think originally I realized that Bruce Armstrong wouldn't qualify, and then for some reason I had a brain
Wait,
fart.
say
and
this
forgot
against
that
me.
he-
What was the prompt again?
It was, what non-Belichick era Patriot would you want to put most on this team right now? So like
In the
Tippett,
prime.
Haynes, Stanley Morgan, you got it.
Oh,
John
Stanley
Hanna.
Morgan.
I said Stanley Morgan.
Stanley,
Yeah,
honestly,
I love Stanley Morgan. I love him way more than Holloway. It's just I'm just so concerned about tackle. That's
no,
what I'm
they
saying.
need a tackle. Like, I see where you're going for that. I'm just kind of like, who would be the most fun? You know who I just want to see in the modern NFL? I don't think this Patriots team needs him, but he'd be sick to watch
Thanks,
in
Sean.
today's game.
Who?
Ben Coates.
So Ben Coates did not play. I just looked this up.
He didn't, right?
His last year was 99.
And then in 2000, he was on Baltimore because
Right.
he won a ring with them.
So we got to Ben Coates eventually. So Ben Coates is in the running.
Dude, Bill O'Brien with Ben Coates, like, come on
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And Ben Coates is one of those guys I know you hate the whole, he couldn't play with guys now because they were smaller and slower and less
Yeah.
athletic back then.
Well, that's what Sean just said about Holloway.
I get that. You can't say that about Ben Coates. Ben Coates was 6'5", 250.
No. Ben Coates was
Ben Coates was a modern NFL
he was
tight
Gronk
end.
before Gronk.
He really was.
Yeah.
So here's a. I know you want to get to the Dolphins, but
No, it's
here's
okay.
a question I've had in the past.
Yeah.
Do the Patriots have the greatest tight end history in the NFL? They have Gronk.
Russ
they have
Francis.
Coates. Russ Francis
Yeah.
is another guy.
Yeah.
The only team I think that comes close is the Chiefs
Right.
with Tony Gonzalez and Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
I still go Patriots. The other thing is, now, like, these are just the questions I think about.
It's June 22nd.
I know.
It's okay.
How many positions do the Patriots have that you could arguably make they've had the greatest player of all time at that position?
So Belichick did that 33rd team interview,
Yeah.
and he touched on this a little bit.
Yeah.
That he thinks
So
in his
he's
mind,
coached, yeah.
he's coached the greatest offensive player,
Yeah.
defensive player, and special teams player in the history of the NFL.
So if we're going to go by position, though, for the Patriots,
Yeah.
they have had, and I'll say arguably, but the greatest quarterback of all time,
Not arguably, but yes.
Right.
Yeah.
tight end,
Yeah.
wide receiver
With Moss.
with Moss,
Yeah.
guard.
Yeah.
There's a case to be made for John Hanna.
There is.
Um,
I'm not going to hurt fans' feelings with this.
Corner.
Right now. Which corner?
Revis.
Okay.
You could make an argument that not long term, but I'm saying that they
Yeah.
had the greatest player at that position.
I guess if we're going to count Moss, then we have to, give Revis.
Well, you could say Revis isn't the greatest corner of all time. I personally don't think he is.
No, I don't
But
think so.
some people do.
Yeah.
Kicker,
Yep. Sure.
coverage, whatever you want to call Matthew
Special
Slater,
teams.
and
Yeah.
coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like half a roster.
if you want to go also, it's tough now because we're getting into the minutia
Yeah.
of
Well,
but
like third down back.
or nose tackle, true Vince Wilfork
Is
style.
Vince Wilfork the greatest nose tackle of all? I
I don't know if he's the greatest nose tackle of all time because that was a position that back in the day there was a lot more options.
Right.
but he's certainly one of the better modern nose tackles of all time.
Yeah, but that's not that. I like that there's not a lot of clarifications on this because think of the greatest player of all time. Like, how hard is that?
Yeah.
There's only so many of those guys.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
And quarterback, you can make a case that some are stronger than others.
Yeah.
Quarterback, tight end, receiver, corner, head coach, kicker, coverage guy. If you want to go by era, I mean, you could say they had the best safety of the two. Oh, no, they didn't. They had the best strong safety of the 2000s.
Rodney.
And Rodney, he's not the best safety. It's Ed Reed.
Also not in the Hall of Fame, which is stupid.
Which is very stupid. The founding member of the 30-30 Club can't get in. And he was the first. Ray Lewis has since joined him. Ray got in on the first ballot. For those of you who don't know what the 30-30 Club is, 30 career interceptions, 30 career sacks. The players who have done that, Rodney Harrison, Ray Lewis, end of list. And in terms of active players, the only guy who's at 15-15 is Harrison Smith. And Harrison Smith was a good player. I know he's still playing. He's not getting a 30-30.
Okay,
Nobody else is close.
I said Bruce Armstrong at tackle because that's like just Patriots tackle. That's the name.
So
Leon Gray might have been better than the name that Sean had.
I pulled up like the all decades teams.
Yeah.
Do you want the tackles from the all decades teams?
Yeah.
All right. So and this is pre-Belichick.
Because Leon Gray, I remember John Hanna talking about Leon Gray and how good Leon Gray was.
Yeah, at his induction, that was
thing.
cool.
Yeah.
So Pat Harlow was the all 90s tackle besides Armstrong.
Yeah.
Only played 4 years. 80s, Armstrong and Holloway.
Yeah.
70s, Leon Gray, Tom Neville.
Yeah.
And the 60s was Tom Neville and Charlie Long. I think it's Leon Gray.
I think it's Leon Gray, too.
Yeah.
And he's a left tackle.
Perfect. Yeah, give me Leon Gray.
He also played next to John Hanna, but
everybody played next to John Hanna.
Good player.
Give me Leon Gray. You want one more weird Patriots?
Yes, and then we got to get into into our AFC East preview.
Yes.
I'm very excited.
By the way, your left tackle Leon Gray, 6'3", 256. It was a different time.
This is you know how I must feel about John Hanna then.
All right, but you get him on a modern weight plan, a modern meal plan,
you're gonna get 6'1", 250-pound John Hanna on a modern weight plan. I think it's gonna make a difference.
With John Hanna's athleticism, you put him in the league now. You put him in the league now. Maybe he's not a guard, but is he like an okay linebacker?
I'm not ready. Like this take is not air ready yet. This is
no. I'm gonna make you.
I've thought about it many times.
You could say he's not a guard in the modern NFL, but with his athleticism, is he a player? He might be a player.
I think he's a fullback.
If he's like 2 inches taller, he's a great tight end. My other weird statistical thing, I've always wondered
6'2", 265 for John Hanna.
6'2", 2. He could play tight end.
I think he's a fullback.
He takes like a move
because he was super athletic.
Like like a George Kittle type. He's got to take a little weight off.
Or like a Kyle Juszczyk.
Kyle Juszczyk. Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
I think he's more like a true like a James Devlin battering ram fullback personally.
No, because he's got a little wiggle.
Yeah, but he's 265.
Have you ever seen him out in the open field? I know, but if he's going to be a fullback and have him take a little weight off. Anyway, the other weird statistical Patriots thing I have long tried to figure out is, and this is Patriots and NFL. So we just sort of figured it out with the Patriots. Like, how many generations of Patriots players have there been? There was the first team, the AFL, that a bunch of guys played 10 years. Then you had Julius Adams. Then you had Bruce Armstrong. Then you had Tom Brady. You can go back and you can pick anybody who's been on the team since 2019. There's a handful of guys now. We'll call it Slater.
Yeah.
You only need 5 players to go back to the start of the Patriots. To go back to the start of the NFL, and you can call that 1970, the merger. You can call it 1960. You can call it 1920, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, what is the fewest players you would have to go back to the beginning, right? Like, so Brady played with, because Brady was in the league forever. Brady played with, and this probably isn't the best example off the top of my head, but
we need a whiteboard for this.
I know. I've tried to look this up, and it's really hard to figure out. Like John Kerry, who, remember the Panthers kid? He began his career in 1982. So, okay, is there a guy in 1982 who was the longest tenured player then, who maybe played in the late 60s? And then can you get somebody who maybe played from the late 40s into the early 60s? What is the shortest chain of players to go back to get to the start of the NFL? I would love to know the answer to that.
So you don't actually know the answer?
No, that's what I'm saying. I've tried figuring it out, but you need to,
I thought you had a point to this. Your point is that you don't actually know.
My point is it's 5 for the Patriots, so that means it's at the most 5 going back to 1960. Maybe it can be done with fewer, But if anybody has the answer, I would very much like to know that and who the chain is, because I think it would get very interesting. I saw somebody do this for baseball once, and it's like, who's the manager? There was some pitcher who pitched in a game or pitched in a game that Connie Mack managed, and he also pitched in a game that I think like Ken Griffey Jr. played, which is insane if you think about it. So what is the equivalent of that for the NFL? Like, are there two guys that you think of just being night and day different eras that they're only gapped by one player?
Okay.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, if sure.
So like, okay, I'll give you another one.
Oh no.
Jerry Rice
Yeah.
and Justin Jefferson
Yeah.
are only gapped by one player. Tom Brady played against both of them. Do you get what I'm saying?
But Tom Brady played for 20 years.
But that's my point. Like, what is the fewest? Isn't that kind of crazy, though, to think about?
No.
What is the fewest iterations going
played for
back
twins.
that you could do that?
Oh my god.
You wouldn't enjoy this.
No, I don't enjoy this.
Somebody in the chat said Chris Slade on the modern team.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Okay.
that would be cool, but
Chris Slade. Okay.
you have a lot of pass rushers because you have him,
Yeah.
Uche,
Right.
Judon.
Well, that's obviously the best player is probably Tip, but
I think I hit the table. Is that
oh
you?
my
Yeah.
god. Oh, sorry everybody.
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh my goodness. So obviously, like Tip comes to mind for everybody,
Right.
but then you have Judon, Uche, Tip. Like obviously that's dominant, but like at the same time, how does everybody play and where does everybody play? And like probably Josh Uche is not on the field,
Honestly,
in that group.
As
but
crazy as this sounds, I'm thinking more about this question. And yet, like, the tackle history isn't as strong in New England. I'm assuming we get this player in their prime, right?
yeah.
Devin McCourty?
He played for Bill Belichick.
Oh, right. It's not Belichick players. I forgot about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk a little bit of Dolphins. I have a couple thoughts on the Dolphins.
That was fun.
We can get into some roster nitty gritty with the Dolphins too, but I want to talk about and just for everybody to realize we're going to take the next.
Hang
couple
on real quick. Somebody in the chat pointed out Patrick Peterson played with Joey Porter Sr. and is going to play with Joey Porter Jr.
You know this. I just don't care.
I love this stuff.
I just could care less. We're gonna do this next couple weeks in this dead period. Introduce ourselves, refamiliarize ourselves, I guess is the better word, with the AFC East. And starting with Miami, we'll do Buffalo, we'll do the Jets as well. So the Dolphins, a few big picture things with the Dolphins. Number one, the question that I have, the biggest question over the Dolphins right now is obviously Tua's health, right? Like if Tua stays healthy, they're a potential playoff team, dark horse contender, whatever you want to call it. I don't think they're truly like a Super Bowl contender, even with the healthy Tua, but they're a dark horse team that could be, a sneaky Super Bowl contender. Other than Tua, and you know how geeked up and nerded up was I about Mike McDaniel in the beginning last year, Alex? Like I just
You fell for it.
I fell for it, and you took your shots at his nerdiness and
It
all
wasn't
that.
his nerdiness. He's just not a good coach.
Okay, so here's the bigger question I have with Miami, and then I also have a similar take about the defense. Did the league figure out Mike McDaniel, regardless of Tua's health, and doesn't Mike McDaniel have the chops? Does he have the coaching acumen? Does he have the Rolodex, quite frankly, to pivot, like to refigure out the league, right? Like, so they adjusted to some of the motion things that they were doing, like motioning Tyreek Hill into the route and giving him that head start. And teams were learning how to switch it off and pass it off and get away with it and not get burned by it as badly. They also started to figure out some of the RPO stuff and some of the motion things and misdirection, smoke and mirrors. When you watch the Dolphins and you watch Mike McDaniel, I think one of the things that really can confuse teams with their offense is just like how many moving parts there are, right? Like you got guys coming in motion, and you got outside zone, and you got pull schemes, and it does look like it's sort of like 3D chess offensive scheming, but eventually teams just sort of figured it out. The Chargers started it. The Niners, obviously that defense ate them alive, but that was during the Niners' hot streak defensively. So the question is does Mike McDaniel have a plan B? Can he pivot? Can he play left-handed? Is there another thing that he can go to? He talked about a little bit about like regret that they didn't run the football more. Like maybe that's what he thinks it is. I don't know. The other thing that I think is also coaching related with the Dolphins, Vic Fangio, their defensive coordinator now. The Dolphins defensively throughout, I would say a large part of like our era of football,
last 20 years,
have been really talented on that side of the ball. Like even going back to like the early Brady years with like Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas, and like they've had some real.
Do you know my take about the early 2000s Dolphins?
Yeah, they probably would have been.
If the Dolphins get moved to the AFC South like they should have been instead of the Colts, they are the Patriots' biggest rival in the early part of the dynasty. That team was loaded on defense. They had Ricky Williams at a time when having an elite running back mattered.
Yeah.
Those teams were stacked. That's another dynasty the Patriots killed.
So I think over the last couple of years, the Dolphins have also been pretty well-equipped defensively in terms of talent. You know, Xavier Howard, I love Christian Wilkins. I think he's a really good player. They trade for Bradley Chubb. They draft Jalen Phillips, who I think is going to be a sneaky breakout star type of guy for them this year. And I love Brian Flores. I think he's a good coach. They've always seemed to not get the most out of that talent sometimes on the defense side of the ball. They have all the star power in the world. And I know your feelings on Jalen Ramsey, but they have Jalen Ramsey, they have Xavier Howard, they have Christian Wilkins. They got guys that can play. I mentioned the 2 edge rushers. And now they got Fangio. Fangio scares me, is the end of this rant here. Fangio, his ability to scheme it up, his ability to set, and really the most important thing, I don't even know if it's necessarily game plan, he's going to install a system.
Yeah.
And it's going to be sound, and it's going to be a system that they can plug and play. And last year, for example, they came here with Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater Dolphins, and a big reason why the Patriots won that game was the quarterback situation for Miami, no doubt. But do you remember that they were down like 10 corners in that game, and they still came out and like played blitz man for the whole first half? And then finally they started playing some more zone, and all of a sudden the Patriots offense couldn't move the ball anymore. I don't think that they're going to be like that defensively, where they're kind of just not really doing what plays to their strengths and their personnel. Fangio is going to have that group well coached, and they got tons of talent on that side of the football. I think the Dolphins are a really good roster, and now the question ultimately is, are they going to be a really well coached team to the point where the ship is pointed in the right direction for them on both sides?
That's right. The one other thing I'd say about the Dolphins, and I think this is something that's done them in the last couple of years, their roster looks really nice at the top.
Yeah.
And you talk about not getting the most out of their personnel. I think it's because guys get hurt. They've never had a ton of depth.
Yeah.
They seem to be a team that they lose one guy and it changes
so
things.
So they addressed that on defense a little bit with Cam Smith.
A little bit. With who?
They drafted Cam Smith.
Yeah. They definitely need a cornerback depth.
So now they have more cornerback depth than they
I think that helps. So, but, you know, and we'll see. They're trying to add Dalvin Cook, right? But, like, at running back, they're not super deep. I know we think of their wide receiver room as being loaded. Kind of drops off after Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, I think Braxton Berrios is like slotted as the top slot receiver.
I mean, their
right
next
now.
couple guys are Braxton Berrios, Chosen Anderson. Why can't I think of his name? Robbie Anderson.
Yeah.
River Craycraft, which is an absurd name. Cedric Wilson Jr.
Cedric Wilson's a fine player.
But that's not when you're trying to replace. I think Kendrick Bourne's better. You know, their tight end room isn't great.
Yeah.
So I think the one thing with them is injuries. It's what cuffed them last year, and Mike McDaniel being a bad coach, not able to call a play. The other thing they did that I like is they have much better Tua insurance this time around. Like, Mike White's a legitimate NFL quarterback. I don't know that he's a guy you're building a team around. I don't think he's a starter, but if Mike White, he's a guy I feel a lot better about. You know, Skylar Thompson, you had to throw in there for a couple games. Don't feel great about that.
Right.
And who else was it last year? Teddy
Well,
Bridgewater.
I like Teddy more than Mike White.
But I kind of do.
But Teddy's also an injury.
Teddy gets hurt a lot, and that's the one thing I don't want. I want my
Yeah.
backup quarterback to be willing to play through anything. So,
Yeah.
if Mike White has to start 5 or 6 games, I think they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
I think they're in pretty good shape if that has to happen. But normally it's depth on defense, like you said. I think they did a good job of addressing that this offseason, but the depth on the offense is kind of questionable at the skill position players. So,
And then, you know, just to poke holes in Miami because we love to do that here.
Yeah.
Their offensive line still has, outside of Teron Armstead, their tackle situation's a little bit thin.
I mean, they have Isaiah Wynn.
Right. Who could actually play for them at right tackle.
So their tackles, I'm just going to read them all off. You're not going to go through left and right. Teron Armstead, Jerron Christian, Ryan Hayes, a rookie, Austin Jackson, Kendall Lamb, Cedric Obegi, I think is how you pronounce that, Keon Smith, James Tunstall, and Isaiah Wynn.
So Austin Jackson is kind of their Isaiah Wynn. Like, he was a highly drafted guy that hasn't really panned out. He's better than Isaiah Wynn, I think, just in terms of availability.
Right.
But he's a similar guy that has a lot of talent that hasn't really lived up to the potential. I still think that they're going to be okay on the line because McDaniel, the one thing that you can truly say about the Shanahan scheme is that it does protect the offensive line quite a bit because they move the pocket, they play action, they RPO. Like, they do a lot of those little gimmicks to protect the line, and they have Armstead, who's one of the best tackles in the league. So I think that they'll be all right, but they're still in the same spot that I think the Dolphins have been in a lot of the last couple of years. I think we're on the same page with this. Their top-end talent is great. They've always had good top-end talent. It seems like they've always been, other than like the few pockets of really down years that they've had as an organization over the last 20 years or so. We mentioned the early 2000s, Jason Taylor, Zach Thomas Dolphins. That team had top-end talent. This team has top-end talent. It's going to be depth, and it's going to be coaching. And the Patriots beat them last year with Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater. That wasn't a true straight-up game. I hate it. I hate that this is a thing. The Patriots still haven't beaten Tua, right? Like,
no.
So how concerned are I don't know if concern is the right word, but how do you see those two games this year playing out? Like, is this a year that they could finally play Tua? They're going to play Tua, I would think, right, in week 2. I mean, it would have to take a really a week 1 injury to Tua to not face him in the second week of the season, which with him, I guess, is theoretically possible, but I hope not for his sake because that'd be scary. So week 2, they're probably going to play the Tua Dolphins, not the Mike White Dolphins.
Yeah, I would think so. You know, is Tyreek Hill going to play? If they don't have Tyreek Hill, the Patriots should be able to win. He's
going to be fine. This is an extortion money grab thing going on in Miami.
The one other problem, honestly, I think the Patriots, even if they have Tyreek Hill, can handle that Dolphins offense the way they're built now. It's Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, those guys coming off the edge against their current tackle group. That's going to be the Patriots' biggest nightmare.
Yeah, so I was on a podcast yesterday. I don't know when he's going to post it, with Travis Wingfield, who's like my equivalent for the Dolphins, for Dolphins.com. And they're really high on Jalen Phillips down there. You know, they really think that he's a breakout star candidate, a guy that's going to take that next step. If he does take the step that they think it reminds me a little bit of like how we were talking about Christian Barmore coming into year 2, right? Like this guy's going to be a Pro Bowl caliber talent this year for us. If that's what ends up happening with Jalen Phillips, with him and Bradley Chubb and then Wilkins in the middle, you can't, with Wilkins is a problem in his own right. You're going to have some one-on-ones on the outside, I guess is my point, with those two guys. And those two guys can both get after the quarterback. So if I'm the Patriots and looking at it with the Dolphins, I'm with you. That seems to be, I almost would venture to say that that's a bigger fear than Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, is how are you going to block their front? And how are you going to prevent the front from taking over?
The way I don't know that that's going to be every team's biggest fear when facing the Dolphins, but for the Patriots, it absolutely is.
So where do you see the Dolphins finishing? What do you have? I don't know.
What were they last year?
They made the playoffs.
They were the last wild card team. I think probably 9-8, 10-7 somewhere. If they get a full season out of Tua.
What do you think about your boy Tua? I don't know if he's necessarily your boy, but he's an Alabama guy.
I liked Tua coming out. My take on Tua has really never changed as long as he's been in the NFL. Everybody talks about him having a weak arm and not being able to throw down the field.
Yeah.
You didn't watch him to Alabama if you say that. He was one of the best deep ball throwers I've ever seen at the college level. And then in his last college game, he suffered a very, very serious hip injury, basically the Bo Jackson injury. And he completely had to relearn how to throw a football. And, I mean, when you throw something, football, baseball, whatever, right?
Yeah,
so much of it is hips.
Oh, the Dak Prescott.
That's where you generate your power, right? And I just don't think he's ever fully
it back.
recovered from that injury, and he's kind of had to relearn how to play the game.
Yeah.
And so that's how you get a guy that at times there's flashes of brilliance, but there's seeming,
I feel for
other
him.
times you watch him and you think, how is this guy ever considered being a first overall pick?
Yeah.
He's never been physically. This isn't he didn't have the talent thing. He's never physically in the NFL been the guy I remember watching at Alabama. He's never gotten to that point. And what can you do about it? He suffered a terrible injury. But if he hasn't worked through that now they've done a tremendous job of, because he's not the player they drafted. He's not the guy they thought they were getting. They've done a tremendous job of pivoting and basically saying, all right, well, this guy can't throw it deep anymore, but he can throw a really accurate 5-yard slant. He can run the RPO super well. Let's load up on fast yak guys.
Yeah.
You talk about building an offense for your quarterback. Tailor it. We talked about this with Mac Jones a lot, right? How can the Patriots not just add talent around Mac Jones, but emphasize his skills? The Dolphins have done a tremendous job of adjusting and putting players around Tua that maximize what he does best now. I just think there's a part of him that wants to be the guy he was at Alabama. I don't blame him for that he's just never going to be that guy again because I don't think he can physically do it.
Honestly, I feel for him, and I know as a Patriots fan, like, you're kind of happy that he didn't turn out to be Justin Herbert, right? Like, if they had drafted Justin Herbert instead of Tua, then...
Well, remember, he was supposed to get drafted over Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
That was the conversation.
Yeah, so...
And it wasn't an insane conversation at the time.
No, and I think you're happy that it didn't turn out this way, but I feel for Tua because I don't know if it's just because I know the injury and how serious it was. I think also partially the fact that he's a lefty, like, it just kind of looks weird when he throws
if you
the
watch
ball.
the video of it flipped, his throwing motion looks so much better.
At the same time, though, doesn't it kind of look like it hurts for him to throw the football sometimes? Like, I feel like it looks
but that's what I'm saying.
It looks like it legitimately hurts him to throw the football.
I think when he wants to really uncork one, I think he has to overextend himself.
Yeah.
And again, you're not wrong in that, and that's why people sit here and say, "Oh, he's got a weak arm, he's got a noodle arm." That was at Alabama. He's putting it 60 yards easy on the dot.
So
it's just the injury completely changed the way he plays the game.
Right, but I look at Tua, and maybe you disagree, but I look at Tua's arm talent and what he's good at throwing, and say that it's not all that different from Mac Jones, where I think both of them can still throw a pretty deep ball. And what I mean by deep ball is like the touch rainbow throws, right? Like the true step into it and throw it up there and arc it up there. The throws that I am concerned with Tua, which similar to Mac, are the real drive throws. Like, can he hit a 25-yard post and just like stick his foot in the ground and throw it on the line? Can he make it, far hash out to the sideline on a 15-yard out? Like, those types of throws, those are when the ball kind of hangs up on him. I still think, and part of this is obviously because he's throwing to Tyreek, and so Tyreek is so open that it allows for that margin of error. But I still think he can throw a deep ball. But he can't. What he can't do is he can't drive the football.
Right.
At Alabama, he could do both.
Right.
Now he can't do either. So I actually look at him and Mac, and they kind of have similar arm talent and like sort of flaws in the way they throw the football at this point.
Now they do, and that's it. They didn't at Alabama, which is, I think, why there's such a difference in perception.
Yeah.
Which I would encourage people. I know we all like to hate on Tua and whatever. If you never really watched him at Alabama, you want to see some awesome, because he was unique. Like, it was like, this guy's doing stuff that, at his size, to play the way he was playing hadn't really been done.
Right, because like the comps were from a cerebral pocket move. Like, a lot of people would say Drew Brees, but I think he had better arm talent than Drew Brees.
And he moved so much. Like, as a runner, he could contribute as a runner, which he doesn't do anymore because I think he's worried about getting hurt again. Yeah. If you want to see some really fun quarterback play, go watch that Tua season at Alabama. That's some of the best college quarterback play I've seen in the last decade or so. He was a really special player, and it just sucks. It's part of football, but it sucks he had to deal with that injury.
All right, so there's your Miami Dolphins preview. We'll do the Jets next week, because I have some takes about this Jets team. I don't know.
The Jets are goofy.
I don't know if I'm a believer as much in the Jets as some other people are. We'll get to the Jets next week, but really quickly before we sign off, we have to talk about Marcus Smart for like 5 minutes. All right, really quickly. You and I have not believe it or not, you and I don't think have disagreed more on a sports thing than we disagree on Marcus Smart. Like this, I think might be our biggest
on a player. I mean, you hate golf, but on an individual player, yes,
that's true. On an individual player,
you also like Brooks Koepka.
I don't think we have ever disagreed on an individual player more than we do on Marcus Smart.
Yeah.
So
you don't get it. You don't get. You don't know ball.
It's
fine,
right? How are you feeling today, Alex? Are you okay?
I don't love it. I don't love it.
Are you in a pint of Ben and Jerry's
well,
later today?
Put the emotional attachment to Marcus Smart aside.
Why
do
you have emotional attachment?
Because that guy. Because in a league that has become so increasingly soft. In a league that has become so increasingly soft, that guy still plays the right way.
Oh,
he still plays with
he's
hustle.
great in balls.
He plays
Alex,
physical.
For every single Celtics fan, every single person in this town, and this is going to get me fired up, because every single person in this town has told me that the Celtics don't have a clutch team, they don't have any balls, they get pushed around, they don't rise up to the occasion.
Okay, but trading the
and
one
their
guy,
heart and soul is Marcus Smart.
But trading the one guy who was close to that. Here's the thing,
how does
Evan,
he have it, but the whole team doesn't if he's the leader of the team?
Because he's not the best player on the team. I think his voice got drowned out at times.
You think it got drowned out?
Yes. I like basketball players that play like football players. Just have that approach. Marcus Smart was a strong safety on the basketball court. There's a March Madness game from 2017 between Florida State and Florida Gulf Coast. What does this have to do with Marcus Smart? There were 45 fouls called in that game and probably another 45 that should have been called that weren't. That is my favorite basketball game of all time. How are you going to sit here and wonder how I like Marcus Smart? I like a guy with some edge. Remember that game against the Rockets that it went to overtime and he basically just got in James Harden's grill and James Harden couldn't take it? The more we go on, the more of those soft mentality, don't want it, because they're like, dude, I'm trying to inbound the ball. What are you bumping me? Marcus Smart plays a full 48 minutes. That's what he does. The Celtics team doesn't always do that.
Well, it didn't rub off on his teammates. And I think sometimes
people got annoyed that because I think his teammates got annoyed that he did it, because it made them look bad at times. Throw the emotional attachment to Marcus Smart out of it.
Yeah.
Marcus Smart, and look, I think ultimately the people who hated Marcus Smart underrated him. The people who loved Marcus Smart overrated him.
Fair.
I think he honestly sat somewhere in the middle. But this was a guy that was recently Defensive Player of the Year.
He wasn't the same guy last year.
He was recently a Defensive Player of the Year. He was a guy that put up, I think it was 18, 6, and 5 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You can get more for that player, regardless of who he is. I don't want to hear they got 2 firsts for him. They got 1 first, which is the Warriors, so that's nothing. And the other first, they didn't really get. They moved up from 35 to 25, which in the NBA draft doesn't mean anything.
This is getting misconstrued. It was a pick swap.
So,
it wasn't a...
Could they get... And yes, they also got Porzingis, but what I would say is, can they get...
Oh, yeah, they got 24 and 8 from Porzingis. So
could they have gotten Porzingis without getting Marcus Smart? Why did they need the picks? Could you just leave the picks alone and put on...
So here's the thing. Here's my response to that. Because there is an emotional attachment to Marcus Smart. I was only teasing you. He's been on the team for 9 years. He bleeds green. Celtic. He loves Boston. He played like a Celtic.
Yes.
He played like a Celtic.
Yes.
And as a Celtics fan, I last night went to bed. This was all still going on. So I was one of those people that woke up to the trade this morning. And I woke up, looked at my phone.
Saw like 30 texts from me.
Saw 30 texts from you. Saw all the Woj bomb tweets because I have notifications on my phone. And I got out of bed and I was just sitting there for a second at the end of the bed. We have like a little stool there at the end. I was just sitting there.
Very fancy.
And Jessica's like, "What's wrong? Like, are you okay?" I was like, "The Celtics traded Marcus Smart," and she just goes, "Oh," and I was like,
"That's what it is."
And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Are you all right? Are you gonna be okay?" And I was like, "I don't really know. I don't know how to feel about this." And I felt that way as somebody that you don't like. I don't like Marcus Smart, but as a Celtics fan and as somebody that is a true green teamer and bleeds green, I wept for this trade a little bit. This was one of those trades where you had to mourn it for a second before you reacted to it as a basketball fan.
I still, even with that, and look, I've seen some people compare it to the Nomar trade, which is we all hated seeing Nomar go, but they had to do it.
Yeah. I don't think
it's that.
I don't remember Nomar ever being hated like Marcus Smart.
You know what it reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of the Bruins letting Bruce Cassidy go.
Okay, so here's my big thing for you.
Yeah.
You have been I've been team stay the course.
Yes.
Right? Like the guys, they'll mature, they'll develop. Tatum's still young. Like once he hits his age 27 season, that's when it's really time to start to put pressure on him to win a championship. So I've been team stay the course. You have been telling me that you turn into the Boston Bruins if you just stay the course. So trading Marcus Smart,
but
your own words, trading Marcus Smart should be good, right? Because
because obviously that comes with
How is that not?
Because I think obviously there's the understanding that when you make the trade, you're going to be a better team after you make the trade. You're going to trade players for what they're worth, not less. Are the Celtics a better or worse basketball team today than they were yesterday?
I think right at this present moment they're worse.
Right.
But I think that I see the path that if they add another ball handler, that they're going to be better.
How? How are they adding a ball handler? They added 2 worthless picks and they traded 2 of their best tradable contracts. Basically, they have to nail trading Grant Williams.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. They can't do anything better than highway robbery trading Grant. If they do that, great. And for all the people saying Chris Paul, he got traded during the show, by the way.
Yeah, for Jordan Poole.
Yeah, they were just trying to get rid of Jordan Poole.
Yeah.
They are worse, and honestly, they might be better in the long term. I don't really care about the long term. Win a title.
So
win a title right now.
Here's the thing, though. Here's why once I recovered this morning.
Yeah.
And once I went and got some coffee and got my mind off the fact that Marcus Smart's no longer a Celtic. Here's the thing. I actually don't mind moving on from Marcus Smart. And I don't mind acquiring Kristaps Porzingis. I just don't like how we got here.
Right.
That's what it is.
No,
because I had Kristaps Porzingis for Malcolm Brogdon.
Right, exactly, which was a great trade.
But now we had to throw in Marcus Smart. So the optics of the steps that it took to get Kristaps Porzingis are ugly for the Celtics.
No, but I think it goes beyond optics. Did they need to give up Marcus Smart? Was there a way, call it, and they would need to add more money. So call it like Peyton Pritchard. They obviously dealt Gallo and Muscala, and I don't know. Maybe this is where I would have done the Grant Williams sign and trade.
Yeah, try to at least.
And just use a trade exception or something. They didn't need those picks. I don't see how those picks help.
Okay, so
can you do that trade without giving up Marcus Smart? I believe the answer is yes. If you are okay with not getting the picks, which I would be very okay with.
Okay, so here's 2 more things about this. Kristaps, I actually really like adding Porzingis.
I liked it better when it was for Brogdon because the one knock on him is the injuries. And for me, it was you're trading an injured guy for an injured guy.
Sure.
Great. He's got to play.
Marcus Smart was injured a lot last year,
He played through a lot, though.
Okay, so here's the thing with why I love Kristaps, though. First of all, it's great. Like, I think their roster is more spread out in terms of the depth now.
He's a great fit with Tatum, too.
And so now that, Al's like 100 years old.
I'm not sure Al comes back.
Rob Williams.
That's the guy. You trade Al Williams, Peyton Pritchard, Mike Muscala, Danilo Gallinari for Kristaps Porzingis. Forget the picks. That should have been the trade.
I don't know if they would have done it. Anyways,
they should have done it.
Al Horford's 100 years old.
Yeah.
You can't count on Rob Williams. So this gives you another big. If they're all healthy, you can play 2 big lineups. If they're not all healthy, then at least you still have 1 big probably out of those 3 that's healthy enough to play. The other thing is that I have really felt like this Celtics team has missed the pick and roll 2-man game at the top of the key. And Rob can run, can rim run, right? He can catch the lob. Al can pick and pop, but neither one of those guys is like a dynamic scorer that when Tatum comes off the screen, the defense has to react in some sort of way that's not just trapping Tatum and getting him to pass up the basketball. Now with Porzingis, this is a guy that scored 4 points a game. Like, he can actually score the ball.
He was one of the, and I hate using the metrics, but according to the metrics, he was one of the elite screen players in the league last year. So you get that.
It's not just pick and pop to the 3-point line. He can catch the ball at the free throw line, score the basketball from there, whether it's inside, taking a little
Yeah.
jump shot, whatever the case may be. And that type of offense, adding the pick and roll game and adding like that little 2-man off of each other type of offense gives them like something to hang their hat on. Like,
But-
this is good. Like, we
so-
can do this every time down and get points.
Porzingis has to stay healthy for that to happen.
Yeah.
The other thing I would add is there. You talked before about like Marcus Smart didn't know his role on the team and all of that.
Yeah.
And maybe the Jays were mad he was taking too many shots. Fine. Kristaps Porzingis is a guy that should get shots.
Yeah.
Jason Tatum, really, Jaylen Brown has to know he's going to get less shots with Kristaps. He should be taking less shots with Kristaps Porzingis on the team. Specifically, he should be taking less threes with Kristaps Porzingis on the team. He needs to be a guy now that is full-on attacking the basket.
Right.
Because Kristaps Porzingis is 6'3", but he's a perimeter shooter.
7'3".
The beauty of that, 7'3".
Yeah.
The beauty of that is you take the other team's best big defender and pull him out of the paint.
Yeah.
Somebody has to capitalize on that. That has to be Jaylen Brown. Honestly, you know I'm not a big Jaylen Brown guy. He's at his best. When I love him is when he gets the ball, jab step, and just goes to the basket because he's so much stronger than everybody else. But he seems to hate doing that. He wants to be a pull and pop guy. He wants to be Tatum. He just wants to shoot threes.
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown needs to be a downhill player this year for this team to hit its ceiling. He needs to. He can shoot threes when he's open, but he needs to be attacking the basket for this team to maximize.
Yeah, and we should wrap because this is not a Celtics podcast.
I know,
but I think that what's really what I like about Porzingis the most is that I do think it makes them more efficient in the half court. Like, I think that they now have they have sets that they can run with Porzingis involved where they can actually play a little bit of complementary basketball, and it's not that 5-out, just chuck threes and hope good things happen type of offense. They should be more consistent on offense with Porzingis in the mix. But it was sad. It was sad to wake up to that. Mainly shocking just because I don't think that was not the initial trade at all, and that was not the initial framework of the trade. But it was sad to see Marcus Smart go this morning. Is a good Celtic guy. I don't know what the Warriors are doing. They're whatever. They're trading for Chris Paul for Jordan Poole. It seems like a weird move, but basketball hot stove is heating up, as they say. But we will be back next week here on Catch-22. We'll continue monitoring all the news with Jack Jones and DeAndre Hopkins, and we'll get into some more AFC East preview. But until then, signing off for Alex Barth, I'm Evan Lazar. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is not a Celtics podcast. I promise you. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.